Hi, I'm Celia Boothman, founder of LTR Coaching, and I'd like to welcome you to the Inspired Triathletes podcast, where I'll be bringing you stories from female triathletes and taking on topics that are important to women in the sport. Hello and welcome to today's episode. I'm here with Laura from Triswim, and she's going to talk to us all about, well, we've got quite a range of topics I think we're going to cover today. She set up Triswim in 2015.
That's
Did
right.
I get that right?
Yeah.
Just told me, and I'm like, yeah, I think I remember. We're going to start off just talking a little bit about your background. So if you could share your journey into swim coaching, what was it that inspired you to get into swim coaching, and how did your personal experiences in the water kind of shape your approach?
So my stories start right from parent and baby swimming lessons, right from 18 months old. So both my dad was a really strong swimmer. My mum is terrified of water. And she didn't want my sister and I growing up being terrified of the water. So she set about sending me to parent and baby swimming lessons as soon as she could. And apparently I screamed my way through about 18 months worth of swimming lessons, but she persevered.
Wow.
Um, and it got to the point where I started, when I could walk, start hiding my swimming costume. I did not want to go anywhere near the water. And then my dad, being quite a strong swimmer, said, "Hey, do you know what? Let's bin off these swimming lessons. How about I take her to the swimming pool every single Sunday?" And that then started a whole childhood of just loving, embracive, supportive environment in the swimming, which any child is going to thrive in. And I'm not alone. I absolutely loved it. And I found that I was naturally very good. And that led into swimming lessons when I was much more calm and able to swim. And then I started teaching from around age 16. So I was a competitive swimmer. I started really swimming when I was around 7 years old, joined a local club, worked my way through, and I was a county level swimmer. I was a butterflyer and a freestyler. Um, and then, unfortunately, my dad died when I was 16, very suddenly. And it was that very same year. So he died in April. And by September, I was enrolled to train as a swimming teacher. It was kind of my way of healing, all these things that I remembered my dad for, my happy times. What would he want from all of that? Well, he'd want me to do something with my swimming. And so I became a swimming teacher. But it was that time in the water with my dad that has really dictated how I teach other children. So I like to call it the method of monkey see, monkey do. So instead of being on the side of the pool shouting down at a child, which can be quite negative and quite scary and overwhelming, I'm in the water with the children. I'm moving alongside them. Hey, look at me. It's okay. I can do it. You can do it too. And it's sort of working on that relationship of support, nurture, and confidence. And then that brings them out of their shell, ready to trust the water and learn much more effectively. And a lot of swimming teachers teach like this now, which I'm really pleased to say. But when I started 17, 18 years ago, that was still quite rare. It's really only been in the last maybe 10 years that has really taken off, being in the swimming pool with the children. And yeah, I find it a much more holistic way to teach.
Yeah, definitely. Because
Yeah.
it's
So,
like you just, yeah. I
well,
love that. That's a beautiful story about your dad as well. I love that he took you and took the pressure off, by the sound of it, a little bit of,
yeah,
not being
just
a.
it's you're never going to trust anyone more than you trust your caregiver, your care provider.
Mm,
They know you inside and out. So obviously you're going to be much more relaxed when you learn to swim. And as a swimming teacher, if I had a pound for the amount of times children had gone to the summer holidays, they'd gone on holiday with mum and dad or their caregiver, and then they've come back much better swimmers. And the
mm,
parents are like, "Oh, I have no idea how this happened." Well, because you were in the water with them, because you spent the majority of your time on holiday in water alongside them, playing, laughing, making memories.
mm.
That's what creates a much more confident, relaxed swimmer in the water.
Yeah, definitely. And so, if people haven't had that swim background, like from a young age, do you find find it more difficult learning to swim when they're an adult? Because
Absolutely. I
plenty
mean,
of people do learn
I'm
later in
very
life.
lucky that I came from a family that could afford to go on summer holidays and support my swimming. But I've also worked in London where I was meeting 13, 14-year-olds who had never stepped foot in a swimming pool before because they
Mm,
just did not have the money to spend on going to the local leisure centre for a recreational swim, let alone swimming lessons. And we know through the government at the moment that swimming lessons aren't as readily available as they used to
mm,
be. And so this is a massive problem, and I've seen it. I remember when I was probably around 21 years old, myself and a friend Brendan, who's still a friend now, who we met as swimming teachers. We were approached with a very low income class, some of which we knew hadn't been swimming before. We put them in the baby pool, so it would have only been knee depth for them, thigh depth at a push. One
mm.
of the lads slipped under the water and he couldn't stand up again.
Oh,
And it's awful. So
yeah.
it absolutely has a foundation in how you and I swim in the water, how anybody swims in the water is dependent on their background and
Mm.
their early childhood years of how they've got into the water. And sadly, for some people, it isn't a positive experience.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's going to shape and color everything that you
Yeah, for sure.
when you get in the water. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
if you have
I
that fear
actually
of,
Yeah, I coach a lot of adults now who the first thing they do is they sit down to me and say, I learned to swim 40, 50 years ago, and it was a case of pushing somebody in the swimming pool and saying, all the best,
yeah.
and so they developed this fear and hatred of the water because they just remember
Mm,
really cold, horrible, dingy swimming pools where somebody just pushed them
yeah.
in and didn't give them any support. So it's a huge theme in the people, both men and females, that I coach these days.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like you say about the dingy swimming pools, I mean, they used to be pretty horrible as places sometimes, back in, well, you still get the odd one that's a bit like, ooh.
I'm still like that.
Yeah. But we're quite lucky here. We've got a nice new swimming pool and they've refurbished a few around, so it's pretty good. But that environment makes a massive difference to you. If you
Yeah.
have thought about, oh, I'm gonna have to go in that, and the smells and all that kind of thing, it's all kind of affects how you feel when you get there.
Well,
So
think about it, it's a really overwhelming experience, especially for
yeah,
anybody that's suffering on the set in the spectrum. It's a
yeah,
huge deal. You've got echoey sounds, you've got these weird chemical smells, you've got different textures, pool, you've got the horrible pool that you used to walk through to stop
oh
verrucas.
yeah.
God. And then you've got different
Veruca
textures on
sock.
poolside itself. Then you've got different volumes. It's such an overwhelming
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So, what is it that led you to you? I know you're a swim smooth coach. What is it that led you to swim smooth's kind of methodology and what they do? What was it that attracted you to that?
Kind of a whole story as well.
Okay.
In short, what I love about Swim Smooth is the individualized coaching approach. I've
Mm,
come through the British swim pathways, and when I was a club swimmer, it was very much a one size fits all approach to stroke development, and especially in freestyle swimming. If you close your eyes and try and imagine what you think a freestyle swimmer should look like, I'm sure you would imagine that 6 beat kick at the back, beautiful rolling motion, high elbow recovery, high catch. And it's that sort of Michael Phelps competitive swim stroke that you imagine. And Swim Smooth came in and said, no, it's freestyle. Everybody swims it in their own free style. And that really spoke to me because when I was a competitive swimmer, it felt natural to me to swing my arms over the water. And the amount of times my coach would call me up on this and get me over and over again to emulate this high elbow catch and high elbow recovery. And I had a lot of shoulder problems. And I dropped
right.
out of competitive swimming quite early at around 16 years old. So when I saw this from Swim Smooth, it just spoke to me. It spoke to my heart because suddenly here was
Mm,
somebody saying to me, "It's okay to swing. You're absolutely
yeah.
fine." And they gave all these wonderful examples of these, not only open water swimmers and triathletes, but competitive pool swimmers. You've got
Mm,
Laura Manadug, Grant Hackett, all these swimmers that had a beautiful
mm.
swing stroke, and it's okay. And I also loved the approach that Paul Newsom, who starts Swim
Yeah.
Smooth, it's very much that our core ethos is respect every swimmer. So it's not just about respecting the stroke style, it's respecting the person, getting to know you on a one-to-one level and finding what coaching methodology works for you, rather than just maybe going into the autocratic style of this is what we're going to do and this is the way it's going to be, which I
Yeah.
know it works out well for some coaches, but
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
spoke to me. But
Yeah.
my journey into actually finding swim smooth, so I was a swimming teacher up until around age 21, 22, and then I ventured into swim coaching. I went back to the competitive pool environment and started using what I'd been applying as a swimming teacher into the coaching environment, and I went all the way through the coaching pathway there. Um, Cut a very long story short, when I was pregnant with my daughter, so I'd had my son who's now 12 going on 13, and my daughter had just been born, and I was laying in bed with my husband, and we watched a Gordon Ramsay program, and Gordon Ramsay was saying, "Hey, I'm starting a triathlon club.
Oh,
If you'd
yeah.
like to apply, get in touch." I can't run. I'm not very good at cycling, but I'm a pretty good swimmer and I'm really out of shape. I've just had a baby. How would you like to take a chance on me? And the very next day, I got a place on Gordon Ramsay's team. So I went from postpartum to my first 70.3 triathlon in 10 months.
Wow.
So yeah, it was an
Cool.
intensive journey. And within that journey was my first dive into open water swimming. And as
Mm,
a confident, good swimmer, even I was scared. I was scared going in
mm,
the open water. What's lurking underneath? Am I going to get sick from the water? What happens if I sink? Wow, if I have a panic attack? All of these thoughts. And my
yeah.
first venture into open water swimming wasn't a positive one. I didn't feel supported, and there was an incident in the water, and I was the one that had to respond to it. So it wasn't actually me that was in danger; it was somebody else. And I remember coming out of that open water thinking, oh, gosh, people deserve a much more supportive, collaborative approach to open water swimming. And it
Mm,
was doing the GR100 and actually talking to Gordon himself, and we had Dino from Hoob, and we had some amazing coaches, and I
yeah.
was saying all of this stuff, and Gordon said to me, "You sound like you should do something with this. What can I do to help?" And so
Oh,
it was with the GR100's help that Triswim was born, and
oh,
they really
cool.
gave me a lot of support, a lot of contacts. They helped put pen to paper, and here I am today. But
That's
it was part of
amazing.
that talking to Gordon and talking to Dino at Hoop that Dino said, "Hey, have you heard about Swim Smooth?" And I hadn't heard of Swim Smooth. And that was my path. As soon as I heard how Dino described Swim Smooth, I was like, I have got to get involved with this. This is where I want to go. And as a
Mm,
coach, this is what I have to strive to be.
yeah, definitely. I mean, Swim Smooth was one of the first swimming sort of approaches that I looked at, and I was like, this is brilliant. It just kind of it makes sense, and the way it's explained just
Yeah,
helped me to understand a lot better what I needed to do and think about in the water. So it definitely has a really good appeal. And it has, you know, that sort of the swim styles. You've got the different styles, haven't you? Can you describe a couple
of
of the
course.
styles for us?
So I think one of the reasons people it's so easy to follow is that Paul was one of the first people to look at the whole swimmer. So we've been putting cameras in the water, looking at tiny elements of a swimmer for decades, but
Mm,
Paul really started looking at the whole swimmer, and we would start seeing problems like very classic problems. Let's use an easy one: bending your knees and
mm,
over kicking at the back. Well, we would look at that and say, well, obviously there's a problem with kicking. Here's a flow. We're going to fix the leg kick, and it'll be all
mm,
good. But put it back into the full stroke and the problem comes back, because the problem was never with the legs. It was actually something happening at the front end of the stroke, whether it's breathing, head position, buoyancy. So this all of these different cause and effects that we sort of listed down and noted helped us create some swim types. So we started seeing these patterns emerge of not just swimming faults, but personalities and how people approach fixing technique and how we coach people. So right at the beginning of the spectrum, we have bambinos. And bambinos are your new and nervous swimmers. So it doesn't necessarily mean nervous of swimming. It means nervous of technique. I don't know what I've got to do to get better. And interestingly, this is an archetype that we see quite a lot from early level female swimmers.
Yeah.
So when I see somebody that's not had any swimming background before, I usually see a female bambino. So bambinos, we usually see their heads are up and about out of the water. They're not breathing very well, if at all. They're just holding on to their breath and hoping for the best. We've got bendy knees at the back. We have poor buoyancy, a very slow stroke style. There's really no catch and pull and very little propulsion. There's quite a lot going on with our bambinos. We then have our Arnies and our Arnettes. So we call them the Jeremy Clarksons of the swimming world. Power, power, power. So they're actually very similar to our bambinos, but what separates them is confidence. So we will see Arnies who have had quite a lot of athleticism. Maybe they're high achievers in work, they're go-getters, they're people that want to do really, really well. And you can always tell an Arnie when they come to your swimming pool because they usually have a notepad and pen and they're ready to get all the answers and soak it all in. So classic faults we see with Arnies, usually flexion and stability, poor flexion through the shoulders. So we'll see crossovers, dropped catch, sinking legs through the water, getting very, very frustrated and out of breath. You will often hear an Arnie say, I don't understand it. There's somebody twice my age in the lane next to me and they're swimming twice as fast as me and I can't understand it. Very classic Arnieism. Then we have our kicktastics. And again, we're talking about archetypes.
Yeah.
And this is a general sweeping statement because gender obviously does not dictate swim type. I see so many different variations of swimmer.
And they can kind of mix, can't they?
Oh, yeah, they can have hybrids all the time. So
yeah.
Generally speaking, I will see a bambino female or I'll see a kicktastic female. And kicktastics are females that have maybe had some swimming background and had a big break from it, or have some athleticism to them, some fitness to them. And kicktastics, kind of clue in the name, they're powering their stroke through their legs. So there is a weakness in their catch and their pull, and they're trying to bolster their propulsion through their legs. So they don't generally like using pull buoys. Paul will tell you that sometimes kicktastics can be a bit aloof. I don't like using that term because I find it a bit rude, but certainly I would say that I can often see confidence issues in our kicktastics, and that can sometimes lead them to being a bit closed off and a bit quiet, maybe because they're just a bit frightened.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Sorry, I was Alexa in the background. They may just feel a little bit nervous about showing their vulnerability, and that can sometimes come across as a bit of aloof, but as I say, I don't really like that term. Then we move into our overgliders. So overgliders are people that have been told that to lengthen your stroke means that you're more efficient. If you can go from A to B in as fewer strokes as possible, that must mean you're efficient. And this is certainly not us discrediting certain swim methodologies out there. This is just us applying science to efficiency. Gliding by its very nature cannot be efficient. You are deaccelerating with every single arm pull. So every arm pull you then take, you have to put more force through in order to move forwards. And that's going to be quite cardio heavy. So other faults that we see within overgliders is sometimes we see very tight shoulders, very tight hips, where they're gliding and pausing through the water. We can see things like whip kicks, kick starts, and that's where they're feeling a glide through their stroke, trying to sort of kick themselves forwards through that sort of stagnation. And again, we see things like drop to catch because they're just trying to stabilize themselves in the water. So I say these are you can be a mixture of things. You could be all four of them. You may speak a little bit to each and every one of them. Then we have our two elite strokes. So our elite strokes are our swingers and our smooths. And classically, your smooths are your pool sprinters and your swingers are your open water. However, it's really important to note you can be whatever your body tells you to be. We see
Mm.
smooths in the open water, we see swingers in the pool. It doesn't matter. But just classically, we say that your smooths are the one that are going to have that 6 beat kick at the back. They're going to have the high elbow. They're going to look sleek through the water, and they just look sexy. Your swingers are a little bit choppier, and they come over the water. They're a little bit wider. Maybe they have a little bit more rotation through the hips and a little bit less through the shoulders, and they tend to have a choppy, faster turnover in their stroke rate as well. So these are they're designed to help you as a swimmer and me a coach establish whereabouts you are and helps us carve a path forwards in improving technique rather than saying, look, this is what you are and this is what you're always going to be, and trying to limit people in that way.
Yeah, because you can like change from one, as you improve your stroke, you can improve and change into a different archetype or whatever. So I found it really useful because I did have a sort of video session quite a while ago when I was training and trying to qualify for Kona, and it was like, right, I'm going to put everything into this. I'm going to get swim analysis done. And it was really handy. And he spent, a long time with us going through the video. He was a swim smooth coach. So,
Who it was?
Can
we say who it was?
I can't remember his name now.
Where was it?
I've forgotten. He was in Cardiff, but he doesn't live in Cardiff now. Or he never lived in Cardiff. I think he was from Cardiff. Is it Gareth someone? Possibly.
Or Alan Cardwell?
Don't know.
He's a swim coach, and that's all
he
that's
is,
important.
yeah. He was very helpful, and he spent a long time going through our videos and and talking through it. And it was useful to see other people's videos as well, and kind of like have a look at what other people are doing and see how would you improve that? Because I coach as well, but I don't coach in the pool. But sometimes people will send me a bit of video, and I kind of want to have a look at it, see if I can spot what's going on. And not always easy to get video footage of people, is it though?
No, I'm very lucky personally that I have my own private pool. So
amazing.
and I use it exclusively for us. So it makes personally for me taking video very, very easy, but so much more difficult to find somebody as an athlete to do video analysis with, because unless they have their own pool, it's almost impossible to get it in a public pool these days because of obviously safeguarding and what have you.
Well, you have to
such a
book the
vital
whole
tool.
place, don't you? To be all have that area sort of sectioned off somehow where it's But a lot of people just have their own kind of endless pool and things like that. Do you find people swim differently in an endless pool than if you're videoing them than they would in a?
Be very careful when we talk about this, because the people that make those sort of swim filters can get a little bit upset when we talk about this. But it's like running on a treadmill versus running outside. Yeah, but your run stance and your cadence will change on a treadmill compared to running outside. Would swimming be any different? I personally find that when you put the resistance through the water, which is they blow air at you, and that creates tiny little bubbles through the water, and that's going to make you sit a little bit lower in the water than you would naturally find. So you may find doing things like drills quite difficult in those sort of pools. They certainly have their pros and cons. Like, it's amazing having this facility and able to be very close up with your coach, and they can see all different angles and can correct very, very quickly. I'm certainly not poo-pooing them as a tool to learn it, but just be aware that it can be trickier to swim one of these pools than a conventional pool.
Yeah, I've got a friend that's got one, and I had to go in it, and I was like, oh, this is really weird.
Yeah, again, like being on a treadmill, you don't
Yeah.
run outside at the perfect speed. Like, let's say, I don't know, 12
No.
kilometers an hour. You peak and trough as you go up and down hills and
Yeah.
flats. And it's the same in a swimming pool. When you suddenly set this resistance to, let's use an easy number, 2 minutes per 100, you
Mm.
don't swim really at 2 minutes per 100. You'll go up and down, even through a
Yeah.
long distance swim. Not by much. You know, there's no room for maneuver in these pools. So it can leave
Yeah.
people feeling a bit frustrated as well.
Yeah, I think I had to set it quite low for like what my normal speed was so that I could actually manage it. Because like you say, you kind of like speed up and slow down in the pool normally.
Did you ever lose a fingernail?
No, I didn't stay in for long. Has
So
that happened to you?
that's the other one. When you set it to a time, and then well, like you do when you swim, you think about Christmas or holidays or food, what you're going
Yeah.
to eat, and then you forget how fast you're swimming, and you maybe get a little bit too fast, and you put your finger through the grate, and you rip your
Oh,
fingernail off. It's a hurt. It just wakes you up, and makes you a bit more sort
yeah,
of.
yeah.
There,
Slow
there goes the
down.
nail varnish for today.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't swim that long in it. I didn't have enough time to drift off. It was just like, oh, I'll have a go and see what it's like.
Yeah, I,
Awesome.
I personally prefer coaching and swimming in a conventional pool, but that's just me as a preference. I
Yeah.
like being able to see my swimmers swimming as they would in a swimming pool when they come away from my session. So I
Yeah.
find that quite useful. But then I've never coached in a smaller pool, so I'm sure I'd feel differently
Yeah.
if I did coach in those pools.
I think it's probably more practical for some people to be able to do that, I guess. Like out here, I know we've got a guy who coaches with an endless pool because maybe he can't get in the public pool to do that coaching and to video people and
Mm,
things. So
mm,
that's
yeah,
one way of getting around it, isn't it?
yeah, definitely.
So with the swim smooth method, have you had any kind of memorable breakthroughs with
Always.
anyone that obviously you've had lots, but
Well,
can you pick out one?
I don't want to sound big-headed, but I've been doing
No.
this for nearly 10 years now. I've been with Swim Smooth for 8 years, and I lost track of the amount of people I've videoed and worked with. And every level and background and ability of swimmer you can possibly imagine, one of which is my husband. I've
Right.
actually trained my husband to be a light and open water lifeguard now, but he came for a video analysis session when he was preparing for his swim time for the lifeguarding. And I was horrified. I was like, you've taken both of our children swimming. This is the way you swim. His feet were dragging across the bottom of the swimming pool. And literally an hour later, all we did was talk about the methodology of breathing and relaxing, and then getting him to apply that to movement. And he completely unlocked his swimming, and now he's actually a very proficient open water swimmer. I won't tell him that to his face, but it's true. He's quite a good swimmer. I've had complete aquaphobics that have come to the pool and have not wanted to put their face in the water. And it's taken maybe 2 or 3 sessions to just sit by the water and discuss it and talk about feelings, realize those feelings are valid, set very small goals, and then get them all the way up to like 5K swimming. And obviously those
Wow.
stories are incredibly special.
Mm.
I always, and I'm going to use his name, and he won't mind me using it. His name is Steve Lindsay, and I always revert back to the Steve Lindsay story because it's just such an incredible story. So Steve came to me 16 weeks before a full Ironman and sat with me
Right.
with a video analysis and said, I can't swim. And you sort of get this a lot as a coach, and you sort of laugh it off and say, ha ha ha, they're being modest. And he got in the pool, and about 20 meters in, stopped, and I was like, oh, you meant it. You really can't swim. And you've got 16 weeks. And he was like, yeah, what can you do? And I'm like,
Mm.
um, well, I'll do my very best for you, Steve, but
Yeah.
we've got to be realistic. And he signed up to 12 lessons there and then. So
Right.
the first 7 lessons, we were very much going through swims. He's very much an Arnie. He
Mm.
had crossover. He wasn't breathing very well. His body position was poor. He didn't have good propulsion catch and pull. He didn't really understand what catch and pull was. But he's one of these classic swimmers that hated doing drills. He would come to the swimming pool and learn everything he needed to do for the drills and understand why we're doing these drills. And then when we say, but the next part is that you have to put this practice, these drills into practice in your own time. You need to swim 2 to 3 times a week. He'd come back the week later How was your swimming during the week? Oh, I didn't do it. I don't like swimming drills. Okay. So we were about 7 weeks in, and it really wasn't computing for Steve. And he's quite an alpha, he runs a very busy, very successful business. And it was getting frustrating for both of us that he wasn't able to move past this technique barrier, and I wasn't able to break the inspiration to him, to get him, to motivate him to train. And I remember sitting down on poolside and saying to him, Steve, I think we've reached that point where we need to have that discussion. And he's the only person I've ever in my entire career had to do this to. And I said to him, it's time to have that discussion, because if you continue down this path, you will not make the swim. And you're investing all this money into your Ironman, and you're not going to make the swim. I think it's best you leave the pool, and I'll refund you for the rest of your lessons and wish you all the best. And I knew what I was saying. Don't get me wrong here. I knew Steve well enough to know that this was going to trigger something primal in him. Sure enough, he got out, went to the changing rooms, smashed the changing rooms up a little bit, got back into the pool and just glared at me. And I knew in that moment he was going to swim an Ironman swim. I said what I needed to say to break that motivation.
Yeah.
And that I ended up staying about 2 hours after his session was due to finish, because I knew he got into that pool and tested himself to swim an Ironman swim, and he swam an Ironman swim. And it was that moment forward he realised the power of practicing and drills and listening and letting go of his own ego to allow somebody else in to help him. And I actually travelled with Steve up to his Ironman in Bolton, and he had a fantastic swim. It was 1 hour 20, and he had a fantastic Ironman, and I'm so proud of Steve for what he did and how he fought it. And it's always been that story of mine of you, and this leads into coaching, right? That it's a skill to be able to read your client and understand what they need in that moment. I am certainly not advocating that I would talk to all my clients the way I spoke to Steve. I'm actually very nurturing, I'm a very fuzzy, fluffy coach. I like to cuddle and nurture. So it's not in my nature to actually sit down and say with somebody, hey, this isn't working. But it's about, coach, you've got to learn the skill of how to apply for every different client you have, and you have to have the confidence to believe in what you're saying, and and that in itself is a whole skill. But I feel Swim Smooth and the training we go through at Swim Smooth really helps you delve into that and understand you as a coach and where your strengths are, and how to bring out the best in your clients. So I cannot say enough positive things about Swim Smooth. I'm now working with Paul to develop the mentorship program, so to bring new coaches on board and nurture them in a slightly different way. And I'm very, after 8 years, I'm really proud to be doing that with Paul. So something mentoring and working with other coaches is something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really like that story. That's so good that you said exactly the right thing at the right time. It was like, right. Yeah, definitely. So, kind of was linked to that a little bit. When we're looking at women in swimming, would you say that they generally excel at certain things technically? I mean, we talked a little bit about the swim style, so maybe not quite so much in that, but like mentally, how do you find women typically present?
Interestingly, women dominate long distance open water swim. We're actually, it's when I say we dominate, men are always going to, I hate saying it, men are going to be faster and stronger than we are as females. However, what we're seeing, and there was a study in 2020, I've got to try and remember who it was now. It was Scopus Research 2020, found that women swimming the Catalina Channel swim, the English Channel, the Triple Crown, and the Manhattan Island swim were swimming on average 0.06 kilometre hours faster than their male counterparts. So we actually are fantastic and well adapted as women to swim in water around 14 to 20 degrees Celsius open water and long distance. We are more adapted to it than men. And there is a lot of research there. So what we're seeing is that women have a greater distribution of fat. So you have your subcutaneous fat, which is our legs and our thighs, which most of us absolutely hate. But as swimmers, it helps keep those
Really
areas
helpful.
warm. You have your visceral fat, which is what we have around our midriffs. Now, for perimenopause and menopausal women, we have a little bit more of that, sadly, than in our youth. Again, that is going to protect your internal organs from the cold. And then we have our brown adipose fat, which is all the way through our body. So women have more of this than men. So first of all, we have our own built-in wetsuits that help us keep a bit warmer. But as women, we have a little bit more sensitivity to insulin. So especially we see this with women that have polycystic ovaries, you know, they have a very sensitivity to insulin. But what that means in terms of heating, it means we're able to metabolize the energy and the fat better than what men can do with their levels of insulin. So again, that's putting us a little bit further ahead. We generally, because of our hormones, we're a little bit more flexible in the shoulders, in the trunk, and through the knees. So that makes us a little bit more efficient with our propulsion and a little bit more energy efficient. We also know that fat weighs less than muscle, and fat is built up with tiny little layers of oxygen. So the bigger you are, the more flirtatious you are. Or flirtatious, you know what I mean? I had to make up words.
I like that word.
You're going to be more flirtatious in the water, and that's going to be conserving of energy as well, and promotes really good propulsion. We have a little bit more resilience to stress. There's research that shows that our stress responses create a little bit more resilience than our male counterparts. I know that's quite hard to believe, but really true. And we see this in another 2020 research, looked over mortality rates over 250 years. And what we found was that women, on average, would live longer through famines and epidemics. And that again comes down to our body fat. Because we're able to metabolize our fat better and we use less energy through our muscles, we're able to conserve our energy. And that also helps with our immune systems. Whereas men would burn through their lean muscle, burn through their energy supplies, and crock it halfway through a famine. So all of these things make women swimmers, female swimmers, actually really better in open water. We also have things like we have a higher pain tolerance than men. You know, I'm trying to think. There's more stuff. I'm sure there's more stuff. But yeah, it's so, and I scream this to everyone because Triswim is predominantly an open water swimming company. I love open water swimming. I love cold water swimming, and I love the science behind cold water immersion, and especially women in menopause and perimenopause, and all the benefits that it has for us when we swim. But there are so few women on the triathlon field, in the open water event field. It's still 2/3 men, 1/3 women, and yet we are biologically better and more adaptable to swimming this. We should be out there showing it and being proud of it because we're excellent at it.
So why do you think women don't want to open water swim or don't enter those spaces?
Again, it's quite difficult. I think there's so many different reasons, but a lot of it comes down to confidence. I think especially as we get older, our confidence wanes as our hormones dip. We don't feel as versatile. We don't have the virility that we had as we were younger, you know, so that can leave us feeling a little bit vulnerable. So body confidence is definitely something. Confidence in our ability is something. I think it's always it can be a little bit intimidating when you see a field of 2/3 men. You worry that, am I going to get lost in the field here? Am I going to be trodden over? Will I have the mickey taken out of me? And quite honestly, you know as well as I do, in the world of triathlon and sport swimming, it's actually a very embracing community of people. I've never ever seen anyone be of any age, ability, background, race. Everyone has always been very embracing. So, but it takes a while for that message to get through and for people to believe that message. I also think as we get older, we have a lot more aches and pains, especially in perimenopause and menopause. You know, as our hormones dip, our bone density goes down. We have more inflammation through our joints and our muscles, that can limit us to actually
Yeah.
starting activity. And the irony is that cold water immersion is absolutely
Helps.
fantastic for these things. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think if we want to talk about cold water swimming.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more women doing it now, I think. I mean, it has become quite popular. My mum goes, but just dip, she calls it dipping, but she just goes on her, and she kind of steers away from the groups because she's kind of like quite quiet. And I think sometimes people, it works really well for some people, that kind of group, big environment of all the women going together. But for some women, it doesn't. And for her, she just likes to go with one friend or a couple of friends or something. And
Yeah,
the
and
lots of women together intimidates her. So
yeah, I totally get that. And I think going back to what you asked about what limits women from joining in is we call it open water swimming. And then a lot of people, male and female, think, well, actually, I'm not a strong swimmer. I'm not going to be welcome, or I'm not going to be able to keep up. I'm going to be exposed as a poor swimmer. But in fact, we shouldn't really call it open water swimming. It's just being in open water. And some people dip, some people just wade in thigh deep. Some people, yes, they do swim, but some people swim front crawl, and some people swim doggy paddle, and some people swim breaststroke, and some people use a float. So it really doesn't matter what kind of swimmer you are. Just as I say,
yeah,
it's having. I think we're on the back foot here. We have to try and find a way to advertise open water swimming without making people feel like they have to swim. And
yeah,
swimming, especially open water, as you say, it can be one or two things. It can be a really nice group of supportive people, or it can be a very solitary solo thing, and both are absolutely fine. You find that some people take inspiration and motivation from that group support, the
yeah,
camaraderie, shared experiences. But on the solo side of things, it allows you time and space to decompress from everyday life. And being outside, we know through scientific studies is better for us. We have our vitamin D and our vitamin C, and it's much better for us. But it's about being in nature as well. You hear the sounds of the birds, of the water rippling, and that can lead to calmness. They call it forest bathing and things. I call it water bathing.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
all these things can help decompress us from our stressful life. So it really doesn't matter if you're not a people person. Swimming by its
yeah.
very nature is actually quite a solitary sport.
Yeah, definitely. It's then there's the side of like being safe and things in the water, I guess. If you are swimming. So I know you're a cold water swimmer, and you're obviously enthusiastic about it, but what would you kind of advise people if they were wanting to start and get into swimming and have, like I'm quite comfortable swimming on my own,
Mhm.
but then I sort of think, oh, should I be doing this? I'm not sure
I,
if I should or not,
I
It's
would
kind of like,
always advise going to a lifeguarded venue, especially if
yeah.
you're new to it. Now, this is not me trying to make a business plea for open water swimming, but
Mm,
I like to think of places like Triswim are very embracing, and we're trying to share our knowledge with you. So when you come down to the water, we will teach you about all the safety measures, how to look after yourself, how to spot for egress and ingress, safe places to go in and out of the water, what kit you should have with you, the sort of things you're looking for with things like hypothermia. We're trying to share knowledge. And if
mm,
after you've learned that knowledge, you decide, I'd like to go and experience this on my own, hopefully we've given you the tools and the confidence to go and do it safely.
yeah.
So my first advice is always seek out a lifeguarded managed venue if you're new to it. If you're not going to do that, try and always go in a group of people, because
Yeah.
anything can happen at any time, even to the strongest, most resilient of cold water swimmers. Sadly, we've already seen that starting to happen this year. We've seen people,
Mm,
very strong cold water swimmers, going for their morning constitutional swim and not coming home. And these are
mm,
people that you always hear the spouse saying, but they were such a strong swimmer. They knew what
yeah.
they were doing. It can happen to anyone, anytime. So always
Yeah.
go with two people, even
Yeah.
if you stays dry side. Um, You always want to have a working mobile phone with you so that should the worst happen, you can call for emergency services. Always make sure that you've got warm, easy to put on clothing. So when you come out of a cold water swim, you're going to be cold and there is going to be after drop. And liken this to when you burn yourself. When you burn yourself, you run your fingers under a cold tap because your skin continues to burn. When you submit, it's the same in reverse. If you cool your body, it is going to continue to cool until the endothermic reactions start warming you back up again. But that takes time.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to come out of the water and get those layers on as quickly as possible. It's okay to shiver. Shivering is your muscles frictioning and creating heat. Obviously, if we shiver to the point where we have lost control of our motor reflexes and we can't speak clearly, we need to seek some help. And that's where your body is going to come into play and help you out. So other things we can do is a warm drink. We don't want a boiling hot drink. Why? Well, if you're shivering and you've got a boiling hot drink, you're going to end up burning yourself. But also, we've shown that having a boiling hot drink can trick your body on the inside as well. So we say to people not to have a hot shower after a cold water swim because you continue to cool. If you then heat your skin up, your body thinks, oh, she's really warm. Well, I'm going to stop warming her up from the inside. And that's going to just make hypothermia come on even quicker and stronger. So try not to do that. But also having a really hot drink can have the same effect. But a warm drink, a warm sugary drink is a really great way of warming yourself up slowly from the inside. Sugary snack or a sugary drink helps level out your blood sugars. It'll stop you from overeating later on in the day. And again, the sugars will help ignite your gut and help warming you up from the gut level. So those are all really good tips and tricks. Even in a lifeguarded venue, this is all still massively relevant. So we don't want to swim when we have open cuts or if we have injuries. That's just common sense. But if you have got a cut and you decide to swim, make sure it's completely covered. Going to a lifeguarded venue, we have a duty of care to take water quality tests. So it's very publicised at the moment that we're not so great with our sewage at the moment. So that just gives you peace of mind that you're coming into water that's been tested, that is safe to swim in, and you are less likely to get ill from it. It's very difficult, especially in the winter months, to know what's safe and what's not. A little bit easier in the summer months because you can see plant life living and thriving around the water. You can see ducks on top of the water, and that gives you a really good indication if that water's safe or not. Plants and animals are so much smarter than us. They know when the water's not safe. So that's a really good indication, but you can often see sheens on top of the water. We don't really get blue-green algae in the winter, or we don't at all. But again, you get sheens on top of the water or slicks where we've had sewage spills. Because of rainfall that we have in the winter, that can churn up rivers and lakes and makes the water look muddy and a little bit distilled. That then makes it more difficult for you to be able to establish whether there is actually sewage in that water. So it's trickier in the winter than it is in the summer. If you go to a lifeguarded venue,
you're going to be okay.
You know you're going to be safe. We're also trained as open water lifeguards to be able to look at things like SIPE, swimming induced pulmonary edema. This is something that a lot of people aren't talking about. So swimming induced pulmonary edema. SIPE. So swimming induced pulmonary edema is it can be fatal. It's very rare for it to be fatal. But basically, it's when your cells from the inside out are drowning. So you've either drunk too much water and then your skin is absorbing water as well. You begin to drown from the inside out. Signs of SIPE are a cough, and a cough that creates a blood-tinged or pink frothy spume. So coffee phlegm comes out is a sign. If that happens, you need to get to a hospital as quickly as possible. But all open water lifeguards that are qualified through the RLSS, we're all trained to understand and spot these things. And I am pleased to say, incredibly rare. But I do actually know of 2 or 3 swimmers that swim with us that have had it. It is more common in women than in men, and it is more common in women over perimenopausal age. So perimenopause and menopausal age is more common in those age groups. So I think it's really important that you and I talk about it, and we at least spread the awareness of it. I've made it sound a bit doom and gloom now, haven't I?
No,
But
well,
it's not.
no, it's important to be aware, but that happens. Does it from in like swallowing too much water?
Swallowing too much water, being in the water too often. We're not entirely sure what causes this type. You know, it's still being researched and investigated, but it is more prevalent in people that hydrate probably more than they need to, that then swim a lot, so they're then saturating the skin on top of that, and then maybe swallowing water on top of that. It creates the cells to saturate and damages the lung lining, and that's how we get
but that shouldn't put people off. Basically,
no, absolutely not. But it is an important aspect for us to share, and things like when we go from warm to cold. Now, cold water submersion has so many well-publicized benefits that have been all the way through the media recently, but they do come with risks, and those risks are when you first get into the water, and you can have cold water shock. So absolutely never jump straight into cold water. And cold water, you're likely to get cold water shock from around 14 degrees and down. It can still happen at 17 degrees, at 18, at 19 degrees. It all depends on how warm you are and how warm the outside temperature is and how cold that water is. So cold water shock lasts for around 90 seconds. So that is when your body and your skin start to get cold, and it's an involuntary reaction. You start sucking in the air, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes down, you shallow breathe, and you can sometimes feel a little bit nervous. It can leave some people feeling a little bit on edge. But after about 90 seconds, your body will begin to stabilize and you'll feel stronger and better. It does pass. And then you're a little bit safer to go into the water. And this is why, as much as I love Wim Hof and I love cold water submersion, I wasn't a big fan of the BBC programme where he jumped straight into a borehole. Not such a good idea. So we have cold water shock that we need to be aware of. We also need to be aware of hypothermia. Hypothermia is actually very difficult to happen when you're in the water swimming. So we generally see hypothermia happening when you're out of the water, when you get that the aftershock that comes on. But essentially, we want to put the body into stage 2, stage 3 hypothermia to get the benefits of cold water swimming. And that sounds awful, but that's just normal submersion. You know, stage 2, stage 3 hypothermia is when we penetrate the muscles underneath and we're cooling the muscles, and then we're getting the benefits of reducing inflammation. We get the endocrine system that does all the good things about bringing up the dopamine and the endorphins and the serotonin and the oxytocin. That's what makes us feel really good. And then later on, when we start warming back up again, we have the endothermic reactions, which helps us maintain our weight, maintain blood sugars, helps our circadian rhythm, helps us sleep better. It helps things like peptides in our skin, so we have more collagen production. That's why we always look quite flushed after a swim. You know, all of these things, you want to be in the water for about 90 seconds to 3 minutes to get into that deep tissue cooling. After that, you can do whatever you like. You can swim if you like, you can come back out. But I often hear we should be in the cold water for 1 minute per degree.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Especially as women, our hormones fluctuate daily. So one day we can wake up and we will have had a really good night's sleep. We've hydrated well. We're feeling great. And I can probably be in the cold water for 15 minutes before I start to feel really cold. And I'll be great. But the next time I go in the cold water, I've had a poor night's sleep. I haven't drunk as much. I haven't eaten well. I'm feeling a bit run down. I can only cope with 3 minutes. And that's fine. You've got to tell yourself that each swim is individual. Don't try and beat the time that you did last week, because that's the challenge to yourself. The challenge is that you need to learn to listen to your body. Every cold water swim is different, and we need to listen and adapt accordingly.
Yeah, and I guess triathletes are not always very good at doing that, like with
No,
that competitive sort of.
no, it is really difficult to get this through people. And if I had a pound for every single time I've seen someone say, "Oh, I don't understand it. I only did 3 minutes today, and last week I managed 15," and I have to repeat everything that I've just said to you and
Yeah.
say, it just might be that this week your body's a little bit adaptable to metabolism, and you're just burning fats a bit quicker, and so you're feeling the cold a little bit more. Off we go. Let's finish our
Yeah,
swim.
it's fine. Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You're getting everything that you need from that cold water swim in around 2 to 3 minutes when you've penetrated that deep tissue cooling.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
it's
that.
kind of like a different, you're looking at it from a completely different angle to actually swimming. For,
Mm,
you're not looking at it like I'm swimming, I'm just going in to get the benefits that's
mhm.
going to increase my recovery and all of those benefits that you talked about earlier. So we've got to change our mindset around it a little bit if we're going to go open water,
Yeah, and I
cold
think
water swimming.
the second mindset is open water swimming. A lot of people come down thinking they're going to swim open water.
Mm,
I'm going to do 1,000 meters today, and I'm like,
yeah,
you have to build up to that, my friend.
yeah,
And it's interesting. So a good example is Lewis Pugh. So Lewis Pugh, very famous ice swimmer. He's incredible. So the body goes through habituation and adaptations in cold water. If you submerge in cold water tomorrow, your body will remember that process for 12 months and it makes adaptations. So then the next
mm,
time you go in, yeah, it will be a little bit easier and a little bit easier. But what Lewis Pugh found was that he became so adaptable to cold water swimming that he was able to swim to the point of passing out in the water. His body would go into such far hypothermia that he would out and pass out. Now, most people's terms, if you did
mm,
that, it would be very difficult to come back from it. Lewis is obviously incredibly
mm,
fit and with an amazing team around him, and he was able to come back from that. But the point is that we the body has to make adaptations in the cold water. You can't just go straight into swimming 1,000 meters, 1,500 meters. You've got to give your body time and space to get up to that. And
yeah.
it's a concept that not all triathletes are on board with in the early stages.
No, no,
And we have to tell them, hey, 200 meters is absolutely fine. As long as you're swimming in the
yeah.
pool during the week, 200 meters cold water is a good target.
And
Absolutely
it's a,
fine.
it's a completely different thing as well, isn't it? Like a lot of people, because of their lack of confidence in open water, they want to start putting more and more open water swimming in, and it's like, well, you still need to do the pool stuff because
Yeah.
it's where you learn refine your technique. And I always think open water swimming is more of a mental game for people to practice,
Yeah, it's
managing their fears and acclimatization to the water. And you mentioned that cold water shock, and
mhm,
that's some people will get into in a triathlon race and they think they have a panic, they're having a panic, and actually it's the cold water. And if you can acclimatize a little bit before
yeah,
and get your body used to it, then you're not going to be like like
yeah,
that
for
at the beginning
sure.
of the race. So
And let's
knowing and understanding that really helps people.
yeah, and I think let's not forget that um wearing a wetsuit has compression as well, which can
Yes.
really change the way that we breathe in the water. And in a swimming pool, every 20, 25 meters, we're able to have a little rest as
Yeah.
we push and glide off the wall. Suddenly, we're now faced with 1,500 meters, 3,600 meters, straight
Mm,
swim. And it's a whole different level of swimming, learning to endurance swim at threshold pace, controlling your breathing, controlling your pacing. So I do see a lot of triathletes that either spend 95% in the pool and then go open water swimming once or twice before their event and wonder
mm,
why they're struggling in their open water event. Or I see people spending 95% open water and wondering why
mm.
they're not getting any quicker and they're not able to get ahead of the pack in triathlon because they're just not putting the time and space into the pool. Both have their place in training. We use a pool, especially during the winter, because we're able to control the variables in a swimming pool. You know, it's a controlled environment, so we're able to look at our pace, we're able to look at our technique without weather, without the water moving, without Sandra doing breaststroke in front of us and with her head up and her toe float, you know. So it is really important. It does have its place in training, and especially during winter. So winter is a time when, first of all, it's a time for us to decompress. We've had our race season, we've had our events, and there's always a natural come down from that. But it's also really important to allow your body time and space to recover from that. So we see a lot of people that finish their events in September, October, and they want to go straight back into the pool. I need to keep my training up. No, you need some time to congratulate yourself for the season that you've just done, to self-analyze and think, what am I going to do better next year, and allow some time to just enjoy the process of relaxing. The next thing we use winter for is a little bit more self goals. So rather than event training, we're going to have some personal goals. We're going to say, today I'm going to work on my catch. Today I'm going to work on my rotation. I'm going to work on my pacing. Or do you know what? I'm going to work on my flexibility and my stability, and I'm going to go to yoga, and I'm going to go to Pilates, whatever it is. You know, have a little bit more personal goals rather than it being just about event, because as you and I know, you can get event fatigue, and it can be all encompassing and very overwhelming, and if you're never giving yourself a break from that, you're going to lose the joy and the motivation of training pretty early on. So winter's a really good time for self-reflection, but it's also a really good time to explore different cross training things that are on offer. So yoga, Pilates, your strength training, you can do things like your cold water swimming, or absolutely anything, even meditations and affirmations, each have their place in training. We can do a little bit more dry land training, so working on a little bit more upper body strength, lower body strength, and keeping ourselves ticking over. So winter becomes a time when they say winter miles equals summer smiles. I kind of take that with a pinch of salt. Also, it's true in the sense that in the winter, we're kind to ourselves. We look after our bodies, we heal, but we keep things ticking over at a lower pace. And then in the spring, we can begin to ramp it back up again.
Definitely. So do you recommend those the swimming cords or anything like that? Because I started using them and I was like, actually, this is really helpful because I can actually feel the muscles moving a bit more. I can feel the resistance a lot more than in the water. So it did help me. But
certainly, cords definitely have their place in training. We've been using cords for master swimmers and elite youths for the decades. They absolutely have their place in training. But much like treadmills, we need to use them sparingly. We cannot use core training in replacement of
not
swimming.
like in the pandemic when everyone was doing
well needs must back then.
I know.
But thankfully we're not in that situation anymore. But I have seen some people using cords in replacement of going to a swimming pool and claiming that their swim times have got quicker. I'd love to see the data, is all I'm saying on that. But we've got to be careful when we're using cords, as long as you incorporate rotation into your cord working, because otherwise you're going to be using shoulders predominantly, and that is not how we swim. As swimmers, most of our propulsion should come from the hips. So like tennis, like golf, that drive and propulsion starts in the hips. If you keep the body straight and just use the shoulders, you're going to burn the shoulders out pretty quickly. Things like tendonitis and impingements, which are not on anybody's agenda for the upcoming season. So yes, cords absolutely have their place. Make sure you're encompassing the rotation with it and use them sparingly. Other things that we want to be working on in the winter is a lot more core control. So where we have a lot of injuries, we see a lot of injuries through like the glutes, sciatica. So we want to make sure that we're strengthening the core to take a little bit more pressure off the back and make sure everything else in the lower levels are stabilized as well. So that's your planks, your Russian twists, all the stuff we absolutely hate doing.
I love them.
They are really, really good. I always advocate yoga and Pilates. It is the best
Mm,
way to keep the body supple, and suppleness means less chance of injury. So,
yeah.
the more supple we are, the more oiled up we are through our body, the less likely you are to get those twinges and those aches and those pains. And you
Mm,
don't have to go to a gym, and you don't have to join classes to do that. There are so many different free programs online that you can find these days and do in your living room. And I definitely advocate them. The other thing we want to work on in the swimming pool, apart from our technique, is we want to look at our threshold pace. Winter is
mm,
a great time to be working on threshold, and this is the power of zone 2 training. I
mhm.
love zone. If I could, I would swim zone 2 all my life. I'm very much a diesel engine, and I love working zone 2. The power of working 2 is taking it down a notch, not working at our maximum, working well below our sub maximum, and keeping it ticking over. That creates a much stronger cardiorespiratory system, so that when we come back and gear it back up in the April, we start from a much stronger level. We don't need to sprint through the winter. We can take it much
Yeah.
slower, much steadier, work on our pacing, work on our breathing, work on those small technique gains. Here's a time where we can use our paddles, we can use our pull buoy and our fins and our
Mm,
snorkels if you want to use snorkels, and we can work on our catch and our pull and our recoveries and our rotations, whilst we're also giving our body a great big hug and
mm.
giving it all the love and attention we need through the winter,
Yeah.
ready for the next season.
And especially, I think the season, you've also got the darkness in the evening and that kind of thing. It's harder to
Right, yeah.
motivate yourself this time of year to do lots of things, but it's always worth it, when you get out and do something. But you also need to be aware that, yeah, it's not as easy
It's
mentally
not as
and
easy. I
physically.
think creating variety in your training through the winter is a great way to keep yourself motivated.
Mm,
Maybe looking at joining a group, if that's what helps you with
yeah.
your motivation, is a great way to stay active throughout the winter. Or perhaps if you can afford to, looking at an overseas swim camp or a triathlon camp through the winter months.
Well, that'd be nice.
It's
I like the
obviously
sound of
money's
that.
tight for a lot of us right now, but if you're able to do that, that
Yeah,
is a great way not
really
only to
cool
meet
to do.
friends and share experiences, but to enjoy a little bit of warmth from the sun and the sea,
Yeah.
and put some time into your training.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I like the sound of that. Oh, well, thank you so much for your tips. You've packed loads of information in there for us, so I'm sure people will be able to find out, have a lot to take away from this episode. So just to wrap up then, are you training for any events or have you got any challenges on the horizon?
So I had signed up to the Triple Crown this year,
Right.
but I ended up getting whooping cough earlier in the year.
What's the Triple Crown?
So the
Sorry, I
Triple
don't know.
Crown is in the Lake District. It's Coniston, Windermere, and I always
Okay.
forget the last one. There's
Um,
three lakes, terrible.
yeah.
But basically, you swim one a month, and it starts
Okay.
with the shortest distance all the way up to Windermere, which is the longest distance. So I'd
Mm.
signed up to do the Triple Crown and started putting all of my training in, and then I ended up getting a disease, a Victorian disease, from my children, and I had whooping cough. So I'm looking forward to the next Victorian disease I get this year. So I stepped back and didn't do it, but I've transferred it to next year. So I'm
Okay.
starting my training now for the Triple Crown. But I generally don't take part in events anymore. I take a lot more
Mm.
enjoyment these days for swimming for me and having
Yeah.
my own reasons to swim. Sometimes I find personally, and this is coming from an elite coach,
Mm.
I find when I sign up to an event, the pressure becomes too much for me and I collapse. So that's
Right.
not for me. But I've been there and done it and got the t-shirts and the
Yeah.
medals.
I think sometimes you kind of like you go through the phase and you can be quite happy just watching other people and helping other people to do that as well. I'm not training for any events either, and I just swim because
I
I
love to swim. Yeah,
I just
exactly. I
want to.
swim because I
Well,
love it.
I wouldn't say I love to swim, to be honest.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
I go, but I
I
know
don't like cycling.
yeah.
Cycling, I can live without cycling for the rest
Well,
of my life.
I haven't ridden my bike for well, several months. Like I've been not cycling as much either. But
My,
it's
my
like, how
butt
do
is
you
in the
keep your motivation then with, if you've not got an event? Because some people struggle with that, don't they? If they've not got something to train for. Like,
Obviously I've come from a swimming background, and swimming has been a major part of my life all the way through my life. So swimming for me is an opportunity to, like I said, decompress. It's a chance where I don't have to talk to people and I have time and space to process everything going on in my life. I've come up with my best business ideas when I've swum. I've come up with my best advice to swimmers when I swim. And so that motivation for me is, I have a very busy life with the coaching and with Triswim and Swim Smooth. I have 2 young children, a husband, pets, swimming, my motivation is, this is my time. This
your
is,
time, yeah.
I can silence the voices and just bubble, bubble, breathe. And so that's my motivation. It's my chance to unwind.
Okay, that's nice. I like that motivation. That's good. Yeah, I don't know why I'm still doing it. I just like doing it because
Affirmations,
I'm
positive
quite
affirmations.
disciplined as well. I'm like I use it as a kind of relaxation thing at the moment. So it's nice. And I like the social because there's always someone that I know in the pool, so I have a little chat and things. So there's that as well,
The
I
funny thing
guess.
is, I'm not a huge people talker outside of Triswim. When people come up to me and talk to me at Triswim, I love it. And I'm very conversational and chatty and articulate. In my normal outside of coaching life, I generally don't like people. But when I'm swimming in a swimming pool, I don't know, there's like a camaraderie between people you've never met before, and it
Yeah,
sparks conversation, and everyone's always happy to see you.
yeah.
You always get your odd one or two that clearly doesn't want to be bothered. Hey, that's fine, you do you.
Yeah.
But you generally get people that, oh, I can see you're a good swimmer. What's your background? Have you got any tips for me? I was thinking about doing, and it starts this whole conversation, and by the end of it, you found the new coffee buddy. I love it. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's if you can take the time to, because I used to be one of those people that didn't want to talk to anyone. No, I was like, right, I'm training, gotta go. But
Oh,
yeah, I've discovered that it's much nicer. But then I haven't got, I've got the time now because I'm not trying to fit in like however many K in a short amount of time. So I understand that as well, definitely.
see it from both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's fun being a swimming coach in the pool because you have maybe a little bit more understanding of the people that are struggling and also the people that are there to train, and you're somewhere in between that, and it becomes quite
Yeah.
funny, especially when you can see in another lane that someone's touched someone's feet, and you're like, oh, drama. What's going to happen next?
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. And I think you can feel the energy as well in the pool. You can feel like when someone gets in and they're like, right, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be really aggressive swimmer, and you can feel the whole atmosphere change. You're like, oh.
Love that. I have to say, I love it when that swimmer comes in because it's like driving on a motorway and you've got to find small things to keep yourself entertained. When that swimmer gets in the pool, they are my new challenge. I must keep swimming until they stop. And they don't know me. They don't know I'm having this internal battle with them. And that just makes
Yeah.
it even more fun.
Yeah, they probably do on some because I can
Yeah,
feel
sometimes.
what people are thinking, can't you? Sometimes you're like, oh, I think they're trying to race me or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It's
And I'm all
quite,
for it. That's what keeps me
yeah,
going, keeps me burning. I love it.
yeah, definitely. It is, well, it adds something to the whole experience, doesn't it? So what is the best? I know you've got some things kind of like in the pipeline at the moment. So do you want to talk about them and then tell people how to get in touch and connect with you if they're interested in learning a little bit more or
Yeah,
having some
so
coaching?
after this will be my 10th, next year will be my 10th year of running Triswim. I decided to create a whole new app for swimmers. So there are certainly different apps on the market, but I wanted to create an app built by a swimmer for swimmers. So understanding all the different challenges I face as a swimmer, I wanted something in one central location that I could dip into. So our new Triswim app is going to have every different swim plan for every different level of swimmer and reason for swimming, from beginners all the way up to channel swimmers, your 70.3ers, your Ironmanners, technique, endurance, sprint, the lot. On top of that, we've recorded a load of drill videos that we show you how to swim the drills and what they should look like and why you're swimming them. I think a lot of coaches forget that your client doesn't come from a swimming background, and sometimes you forget to tell your client why they're swimming a drill and how it applies to their full stroke. So these drill videos that we've created help you unlock that. We've also created some home PT workouts. So that's for stretching and resilience training, body weight workouts, cardio. We've got some home yoga workouts. We've got some meditations and some affirmations. We have a lot of people that swim with us that are very competitive, that live on that knife edge, who maybe struggle to sleep in the evening because they've got too much cortisol. So things like meditations can just help bring that back down and help you swim a little bit better. We have a lot of people that struggle with body confidence or just general confidence in their abilities. So affirmations are really good. You know, it may not be for you, but there are a lot of people that this thing will work for. We have nutritional plans and recipe guides for every type of diet, whether you're race prepping, gluten-free, keto, whatever. Hundreds of recipes. And so, yeah, this has become a labour of love where I hope it will help people not only have a guided pathway to getting better, but also help them understand their journey and that it is a journey. And in every journey, there are twists and turns, there's bumps in the road, and that's absolutely fine.
Definitely. Oh, it sounds amazing. And so when do you expect it to happen? You don't know.
So we're in our beta testing stages now. So we're hoping to have the app ready to roll out before Christmas. So keep an eye on our social media, Triswim social media, because we're putting all the updates on there. Other things that we're doing is we've got a lot of interesting, fun stuff coming out of Swim Smooth next year. So we've got this great mentorship program where we're taking on new coaches. We want to share the love with coaches, spread the love and awareness of Swim Smooth. So if someone's watching this who may be a triathlon coach or an open water coach and wants to understand biomechanics of swimming, techniques, and how to apply that to their coaches, do get in touch with us because we want to share our knowledge with you. And if you're a swimmer watching this, wanting to improve their swimming, I cannot encourage you enough to go and check out Swim Smooth's website because it is the best tool out there for every level of swimmer, breaking it down into bite-sized chunks and helping you understand your individual technique.
Yeah, definitely. I use it as a resource with clients all the time. I kind of say, go and have a look at that because it's really helpful to just understand the drills and what you're trying to achieve. I've got the book up there as well. I had the book before he launched all the online stuff. It's quite a long time ago now. But
it's it's still a relevant book.
It's really good. Yeah, really helpful. I found that was super useful. So people can get in touch with you through Instagram, online. If they look for Triswim, they're going to find you. I'll put all the links anyway below so that people can contact you.
So I've got a perimenopausal brain myself. I cannot remember all of the different handles we have for social media.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll make sure that they're on there, and if I need any off you, then I'll let you know. But yeah, it's been great talking with you, and thank you for all your tips and advice, and your enthusiasm and your passion for swimming has really come over. So thanks. Thanks for listening today. Have a great day. Take care. Bye for now.